The official story of the Ukraine war was grossly misleading. Shortly after Russia launched its attack on Ukraine on February 24, 2022, President Biden condemned the invasion with a barrage of adjectives: unprovoked, unjustified, brutal, without cause, premeditated, and unnecessary. This characterization was echoed by mainstream media, professional pundits, and others, who routinely referred to the war in Ukraine as unprovoked. This term became central to the official narrative, which places sole responsibility for the war squarely on Russia and President Putin. This narrative has been continually reinforced by rampant speculation seeking the origins of the invasion in Putin's psyche. Is he insane, terminally ill, suffering from a messiah complex? Obsessed with reconstituting Tsarist Russia or the Soviet Union? These theories, often based on patchy, ambiguous, or no evidence at all, are endless but consistently dubious. A much-needed counter-narrative is provided in Benjamin Abelow's recent book, How the West Brought War to Ukraine. During German reunification in 1990-1991, U.S. and NATO officials assured Soviet leaders that NATO would never expand into Eastern Europe. Despite these initial assurances and subsequent Russian complaints of being deceived, NATO proceeded to expand right up to the borders of the Russian Federation. Although these assurances were never formalized in writing, their betrayal deeply eroded Russian trust in Western promises. Many prominent diplomatic experts, including George Frost Kennan, famous for formulating the Cold War policy of containing communism, warned that disregarding Russia's legitimate security concerns and pushing NATO eastward was reckless and could likely lead to conflict. As NATO expanded, the United States and NATO engaged in various actions that Russian leaders were likely to perceive as militarily threatening. The U.S. withdrew from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty and the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, ignoring subsequent Russian attempts to negotiate a bilateral moratorium on deployments. The U.S. also deployed nuclear-capable missile launch systems in Romania and planned similar installations for Poland and potentially other locations. Additionally, the U.S. and NATO conducted live-fire rocket exercises in Estonia to simulate strikes on targets within Russia, and organized massive 32-nation military training exercises near Russia's borders. In Ukraine specifically, the U.S. and NATO exacerbated internal divisions within the country. The U.S. played a role in the 2014 coup that ousted Ukraine's democratically elected president and influenced the selection of his replacement. Rather than advocating for a negotiated settlement between Ukraine's post-coup government and pro-Russian separatists in the Donbass, the U.S. poured weapons into Ukraine, intensified military training for Ukrainian forces, and supported ultra-nationalist and anti-Russian groups, including some neo-Nazi militias. Even in late 2021, as the prospect of war loomed, the U.S. and NATO refused to renounce plans to incorporate Ukraine into NATO. The U.S. declined to even discuss the matter, despite Russia's objections. This issue is not merely of historical significance. The official narrative shapes not only how the war in Ukraine is understood, but also how it might ultimately end. By framing Russia and Putin as the sole perpetrators of the war, U.S., NATO, and Ukrainian officials maintain that the conflict cannot end until Russia is completely defeated, strategically weakened, and forced to return all previously Ukrainian territories, including Crimea. Such objectives are not only unrealistic, but also obstruct any serious effort to end the war through negotiations.